Hi guys, hi folks, welcome back to Cannock Chase Paranormal Investigations, and I just wanted to kind of thank anyone who subscribed because I don't post that often, and I intend to kind of post a little bit more, but these videos take a lot longer than just any other videos that I'm doing, and because this is a retrospective video, I've had to kind of give it a lot of thought and put together a lot of information just to demonstrate or just to be able to give you a full count of what happened. So this is an investigation that took place in July, I think it was July the 6th, 2019, and it was a place called Castle Ring. And we had actually intended to go somewhere else that night, but because there were so few of us, we decided to go to somewhere that was well known and that we could maybe follow previous paths and have a little bit of fun, a little bit of freedom to explore the places that we'd already been a little bit more. But we never really knew what was going to happen, and it was one hell of a roller coaster ride this night. So I'm going to try and talk you through it. I've kind of managed to upload a few pictures. I've got one or two videos which may or may not show you anything. There is one video which I haven't really looked at, and it was just footage following an event, so it might just show you absolutely nothing. But if you do see anything, please let me know in the comments below. And there is another video which was actually of activity, which I'll get to, and I'll try and describe as best as I can what happened there. And also, I'm not just going to be talking about old investigations on this channel. I do want to start filming some new investigations. I did attend an investigation about a week ago at a place called German Cemetery, and unfortunately I kind of left my brain at home that night, so I left SD cards, I left microphones, so I was about as much use as a chocolate teapot on that evening. But it was a real freezing cold evening, quite an interesting evening too, and I might talk about that at some point, but we're still running through that investigation to try and debunk one or two aspects of it that we've had a few theories since. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to try and talk you through this investigation. As I said, this was from 2019. It was a beautiful night. The weather was fantastic, and I think the sun didn't go down until around about 10 o'clock. It felt like it was getting darker and about then. So, okay, I'm just going to upload a few photographs now. So Castle Ring is an Iron Age fortress that I think dates back to about 1,000 years BC. It would have been there when the Romans invaded. I think the Romans were present in the area of Cannock Chase. I don't know too much about the history, and I quite honestly, I've tried to avoid history and facts which may kind of skew my actual kind of observational abilities when I've been on Cannock Chase, because you tend to kind of start to want to read into too much when you know too much about the area. And I've actually set myself a date when it gets to about, it would have been at the end of 2020. But obviously we couldn't investigate Cannock Chase pretty much for the entirety of 2020. But yeah, I set myself a date of about 2 years of investigations before I started then kind of researching the history and anecdotal evidence from other people to see if anything kind of fits. I'm more sort of interested perhaps in the near future about the geology of the place, but yeah, for this was is Castle Ring, and it's an amazing place. It's about 200 plus meters above sea level, I believe. It's about 60 meters down to the lower slopes, and I think it was inhabited by a tribe called the Cornovi, which is Cornovii. I think that's how it's spelled. And that would have been a tribe, maybe like a Celtic tribe, probably worshipped pagan gods, perhaps, and they would have spoken some kind of Britannic Celtic language. I'm not kind of entirely sure. The history books don't tell you too much about them. I think there was another tribe as well. Maybe I think they were called the Kutani. But yeah, I don't really kind of know too much about history. I just know that basic a little bit about what Castle Ring is. There was also like a medieval hunting lodge at some point, so there may have been some royal presence there as well on the chase. And I think there are sorts of markings that denote where the hunting lodge perhaps sat. It's not very clear on this map, but if you ever visit the place, you can kind of find the markings of what was probably a hunting lodge or something. So that's Castle Ring. And just to actually add, when we arrived that night, we come from the car park, which is just around about here, and we kind of travelled round the ring. And I think we made our way down to this lower path here, and essentially we kind of then made our way down through the forest. So let me just play that on a bit. So this is a second frame, and so as you can see, the red path is basically the path we took down, and it takes you for an amazing bit of forest, ferns and everything like that. And up until this point, nothing happened. It was just a really beautiful night, and it was a beautiful walk through the forest, through the ferns, and we came out onto this path here, and we made our way round this path to a point where, if you look on there, it says meter activity, and that's something I had pinned on a Google map for a couple of years now, since the event, because I wanted to mark that exact point if ever I needed to kind of refer back to it. The meter activity was there. There is a sort of a lake or pond or pool, you could call it, there. And then there's this really strange, mysterious, I think it's worth £1.4 million. There's a house just there. Never ever seen anybody in that house, but it's a real point of kind of curiosity that there is a house in Cannock Chase worth that much money and doesn't seem to be occupied. So yeah, that's where we went down, and I'll see if I can find see if there's any other pictures of this path. So this is a picture of a forest that we came through, and the really kind of great thing about this is when you look at it from on a Google map, it doesn't look that dense. But what you don't kind of really appreciate when you're there is that the ferns come right up to your shoulders almost, and you could have any kind of animal living in those ferns. You could have anybody could crouch down and you wouldn't even know they were there. I have been down there by myself in the past, and I have experienced maybe disorientation. I've also experienced the smell of there was something rotting in there, and I thought it may have been a dead deer or something. And I kind of dismissed that, but I felt a little bit uneasy. I think it's just probably natural to feel really uneasy if you smell something that smells like it's dead, because that would it kind of like you get images then of maybe an animal's killed it, or maybe it's diseased or something. But so that was in the previous weeks I went there, and that's when I experienced the feeling of disorientation around about this place here actually. Okay, it's just another picture, and you can see that even though the trees aren't dense themselves, it is incredibly beautiful but dense forest. And yeah, the height of those ferns was incredible this evening. Okay, so this is a picture I wanted. So we walk down to this path, and I don't know why I decided to stop where I stopped. And as you can see, there is that house there. I think it's worth about £1.4 million. That this whole lake belongs to this house. It's got like a little jetty. I've had a good kind of close look at it, and also it does, you can find it on the property guide, so you can actually have a look at what it's like inside. I don't want to be too intrusive because somebody may well live there. I've never seen anybody live there, and it's just a wild kind of driveway that leads to it, and they have to kind of drive probably a kilometre through Cannock Chase to get to it. It just seems like a really improbable place to live, but you know, people can be eccentric and people can have a lot of money. And I guess maybe there's somebody who enjoys the seclusion of this property, but as there's people walking past it quite often, I'm guessing, then it wouldn't be that secluded. Personally speaking, I'd probably feel a little bit uneasy if I had to live in such a place because it's off the beaten track, and I do like to feel that, you know, help is at hand if ever anything untoward happened. So yeah, what can I tell you about this evening? We arrived at this point here, and there's about 4 of us on this investigation, and for some reason, I'll never be able to explain why I said this. I told the 3 of us to carry on, and they carried on. They went around here. I think they may have walked all the way down to this house. It doesn't look very far, but it's probably about 100, 150 metres maybe. So yeah, after the guys had disappeared around the corner, I set the meter down onto the ground around about here where I've pinned it on a map. And I don't know why I kind of had these feelings, but when I put the meter down, I've set my phone to flight, I think, and I put my phone on record. I'd already tested how sensitive the meter was to my phone, and it wasn't that sensitive. You've got to get real close up to it, and only then will it kind of judder a little bit. So I know that with a tri-film meter, I'm pretty secure in the knowledge that if it does go off, it's not me that's going to be setting it off right there and then. So I waited around a few minutes. I think I recorded about a 4-minute video, which I've shortened to about a minute and a half. And I just kind of waited to see what was going to happen. I really had an odd feeling. I was by myself, essentially. There was nobody else about. My 3 friends had travelled around the corner to the house. They're about 150 metres away. The woods to my left they look quite sparse, but on the actual video, you'll see that there is enough kind of foliage and woods for you not to be able to see beyond the line of the woods where they begin, and it's quite deceptive really when you look at these Google Maps how sparse they actually look, but in reality they're not. You've got a lot of foliage between the woods. You've got tall grasses, ferns, and there's always something. So yeah, so there I am. I'm stood on this path, and it's a pretty basic path. I'm not in the middle of a forest, and I have woods to my left or to my right if I'm turning the other way. I'm just kind of waiting for something to happen. I just had a feeling something odd was going to happen, and I have to say, in my hand on my heart, I would never ever set my meter up to go off, and I'm always aware of anything around me that could set it off. We've set it off in the past with two-way radios. They're notorious for setting off meters. K2s will go off with that, and my meter will also go off with that. But at this point in time, there was just me, my mobile phone. I was stood far enough away to not interfere with the phone whatsoever. So I'm still on the path. So the video that's coming up is probably about a minute and 30 segment of when something happens. that's me zooming into it. So I'm just going to pause it there. So what essentially happened was, as I stood on the path, I heard what I could only describe as a cracking of twigs and branches. There was something stood behind me where I had my back to, and instinctively I kind of whirled around. I'm still recording it. I whirled around. What I don't understand is how my phone hasn't actually picked up the sound of these crunching twigs, because it was definitely something that was just on the edge of a forest, or maybe it was just inside the forest, I'm not sure, but there was something there, and I felt like it was on the edge of a forest, and as I turned around, I was absolutely sure, 100%, my hand on my heart, I was absolutely 100% sure that I was going to be face to face with something otherworldly or unusual. And I've encountered plenty of deer on Cannock Chase. I don't get that same feeling. I felt really, honestly speaking, that there was something stood right behind me, and that I was probably, for the first time ever, was going to come face to face with something totally and utterly paranormal. And that's what you kind of see in this. I spin around. I've still got the phone zoomed in at this point because I was focusing on the meter. I'm going to go quiet now. Okay, if you do that again. Thank you. So yeah, I'm just going to rewatch that again, because I haven't really seen this through too many times, and it still gives me the shivers to watch this. I was absolutely sure something was stood there. I mean, I was 100% sure something was actually stood in that forest, watching me. I still don't know. I mean, maybe there was something there. You can actually see how dense the forest is. It's and it doesn't look dense if you look at it on the. It just doesn't look dense if you look at it on Google Maps. But there you go. It is really dense, and anything could be stood there. I wouldn't know. But then after the twig crunching, okay, if you do that again. So I mean, I've never ever had that happen with my meter. I've been to loads of places, and I've been on Cannock Chase, numerous times, and I've never had that kind of reaction. Like I said, I don't know what was stood there. I don't know what I was experiencing. All I know is that for some reason, something wanted me to stop on that path, which goes against every instinct I've got. Because the last thing I want to do is get caught out, is to intentionally separate myself from the rest of my team and be caught out on a path by myself, or even in the woods. That's the last thing I'd want to do, because if I did encounter something, if I did see something, I'd want somebody else there to kind of back me up with proof that could corroborate that they saw something as well as me. But whatever it was, it wanted me to stop on that path, and I did, and this is what happened, and my meter went off. I've never seen it do that before. I'm still convinced there was something stood behind me, even now. Thank you. So yeah, this picture is just there to show you how light it was. It was still about 8:30 at night, and it's still lovely and warm and bright and sunny. And then the rest of my team came back from around the corner, and we kind of regrouped and we started walking back along the path. And that's where things started to get even stranger. Obviously, I told them all about my experience, and we did another meter session with using a K2 and my tri-field, and we didn't get anything. So I know that it wasn't the phones, or it wasn't anything that set that meter off. Any device, I should say, any electrical device. The photo itself shows the other members of my team, and as you can see, it was an absolutely beautiful night. So what we then experienced was, as we were walking back up the path, kind of in the direction of where we originally came from, we saw what we assumed to be a bird of prey in the sky. And I think when you're out in somewhere like Cannock Chase, you really got to take in the nature, and you've got to really appreciate what's around you. I mean, some of these experiences are priceless with the animals, the deer, birds, owls, even bats. It's the kind of thing you don't see in the city so much. So yeah, we were walking back. We were watching this bird flying around in circles, and it just had a really kind of wonderful, warm vibe. It was a beautiful night. It was around about 9:15 at this point. And we weren't that far on from where my meter activity was, so that was the first activity. So yeah, we stood there watching this bird, and all of a sudden it just goes, boop, it disappears, and it didn't fly into any trees. It was in the middle of the sky, and it just disappeared out of sight, and we were kind of left wondering where has it gone? And then all of a sudden the whole mood changed on the ground. And I don't know if the two things are connected, but it was just a really odd sequence of events. At one point, we've got this bird flying around the sky. It feels warm. It feels just a really nice experience of nature. And then all of a sudden, the bird disappears, and the whole feeling at ground level just changes. It felt quite, I wouldn't say oppressive, but you kind of felt like something was with you at ground level. Something was following us, not following us, but something was present with us. So that was really, really odd and interesting. That was the second odd thing that happened that night. So his map actually of so that's where the meteor activity was, and we came up here, and it was around about here where we saw the bird flying in the sky, which just then disappeared, and then we kind of carried on walking, and then there's a yellow path here which leads down to a pool. It's a lovely kind of grassy path. It's very Lord of the Rings-esque. It makes you kind of feel you're in like a fantasy movie. So yeah, as we walk down this path, where you see the little green circle, we getting towards the pool. One of my friends stayed at the top of the path, just didn't fancy coming down. So we got to the pool, and all of a sudden, we heard a cracking of twigs again, as if something was stomping just in the woods to our left. And then it was really strange. We saw a green orb rise into the trees, and it was just such a bizarre experience. I wasn't filming at the time, but immediately one of our team felt very sick. He was stood quite close to where the orb flew up, and the crunching of twigs was just behind where the orb flew up. It disappeared into the tree canopy, and that was it. But he felt quite sick for a moment. I think it lasted probably a number of seconds before he started to feel a little bit better. And I did actually start recording with my mobile phone. I haven't watched this footage through, so I'm going to now sort of carry on playing. Here we go. So this is the area down by the pool, and this is just after we've experienced these crunching of twigs underfoot and the orb flying into trees. So I've never seen this footage before. I forgot I even recorded it with my phone. I was trying to figure out for ages where I recorded it, but it turned up on like a real hidden file in my phone for some reason. So yeah, I'm just going to have a listen and watch to see what happens, if anything. There'll probably be nothing on this video. Don't know about you, but I just felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Is anyone here with us? Come make yourself known.
There's someone down there, Dad. I can hear someone talking.
Is that what you saw?
No, it's over there. That talking from over there. But it looks to me like a small green ball goes up in the air.
Wow.
Just like...
So, yeah, maybe something after you said that name. Cumnos.
So you can't even know the over there because it's a pond.
If there's anyone here and you wish to make contact, so come north. There's definitely something, because I heard that massive crack.
Yeah.
And we both looked over and you saw something going on. Definitely feels like the atmosphere's completely changed down here now. Ever since you said that name, Shannon's getting eaten live, so it's... Really?
Mm-hmm.
You feel alright?
Yeah.
It's a good place to camp out, wouldn't it? You think we should go further, or do you think we should?
Do you want to just go through that gap there?
Can do, yeah. Should have brought the walkies for you. Mm.
No, Dad, there's a path here, but I think it's boggy. Huh? You're welcome.
It definitely feels different to what it did when we came down here at night. And even though there was about 6 of us, it felt fine. You're getting that feeling that we're being watched.
Yeah.
And you're glad you came now. What would you do if you saw something? Would you be like really excited, or
I don't know. It depends on what I saw.
big, hairy, about 9 foot tall?
I'd be running. What are you doing, Dad? Huh?
Oh God, I wonder what it was then.
Huh? Just go with the camera, it's not because I'm still warm, I just
Ow.
the sleep goes in that far corner.
Okay.
But the scratches and that branch cracking up was right here. And we had to, kind of...
I swear to God, that's what I've seen. It looked like a little ball. Ball.
Yeah, we've seen them before. But not up here.
That's what it's died was.
Some people walking out.
There's somebody up there. There's a shame, joking.
Video, that little slice of video, I've never actually seen that before, and that was languishing on my phone, and I only recently discovered it, so I'm really kind of glad I did. It does kind of throw some kind of context on those moments following what we experienced. We don't get too excited by stuff. It's just another thing to observe and note, and so we made our way back to the Castle Ring. We came I can't remember which route we came back on, but nothing actually happened between down by that pool, which was sort of down this way, and getting back to Castle Ring. Once we got onto Castle Ring, it was getting quite dark. Incidentally, the video that I just showed you was from about, I think it's probably about 9 p.m. On the evening, and it did kind of get rapidly dark after that. So yeah, I mean, the sun had virtually set once we arrived back at Castle Ring, and it's getting really, really dark. So we walked around a little bit. We came onto the ring for about, how long? We've been there I think we were there about half an hour to an hour. I can't remember exactly when, but we were just talking about everything we'd experienced during the evening. And I think you may have heard me mention the name Cannock. And this was my team member who was talking about the possibility of who the Cornevi would have worshipped. And I think Cannock is similar to Herne Hunter. Again, I'm no expert, so if any of you watch this video and you can educate me a little bit on the types of gods or deities that were worshipped by this potential tribe that lived there, then I'm kind of more than happy to read that. And it's not really a case of being standing corrected on information, but it's just a bit of education, which always helps. And then we started to make our way back along I think it's clockwise around the ring. Eventually, we would have ended up at the car park, which is just out of view. It's not very far. The car park is literally right there. So as we're walking around the castle ring, we kind of, I reached about here. One of my friends was about here, which was about 20 meters on from where I stood, and getting very excited about something that could see from a distance. And for sure, I could see the light reflecting off something that was like a weird sort of orbish kind of glow to it, and it was kind of coming down to the ring. It seemed to be sort of approaching us. I mean, it's still quite a way away, but we were watching this thing, and probably the first time in the evening, I actually kind of felt quite frightened, and I don't really know why. If it was anywhere I should have felt frightened, it was down where I had the meter activity, because I was quite vulnerable. But I think at that point I was just, I had a bit of adrenaline, and when that happened, it wasn't fear. But quite honestly, while I'm stood here with the three of us, I did have a sense of a real fear. That's whatever we were looking at. It didn't feel right. It didn't move right. So the first thing I always do is to try and explain away what I'm looking at is to get my night scope out, it's fantastic. And normally from this kind of distance, I could probably pick up a rabbit, and you could probably see the two eyes, nice little form of rabbit. But essentially what happened was that as my friend shone a torch from this angle over to the object, and I had my night scope from this angle, I kind of I was looking at a form, but it didn't seem to stay still. It seemed to be moving up and down, left and right. It was almost like a big lump of black Play-Doh, which was stretching and forming new shapes. So I couldn't actually really make out what I was looking at. Hopefully the next slide will show. So yeah, I mean, from this distance, and because I was maybe moving about a little bit, this was as good as a picture as I got. So from about this angle, my friend would have been shining a torch, and from this angle, I was focusing on what it was. But like I said, the image kept blurring and it kept moving and morphing into one shape and another. And just to say, after this evening, a good friend of mine took these photographs away and analysed them. He analysed them at a university using software, and he kind of broke the pictures down so we could actually see more detail of what we were looking at. So this was the one photograph I took, and this, all of a sudden, once you start to take it through a process, you see something completely different. Now, I have no idea what this is. It looks like, to me, personally speaking, it looks like a person stood there, sort of bent over with a head. It's impossible to say, but all I know is at the time, whatever it was seemed to be moving very unnaturally. It wasn't moving like I would expect a man or a woman or a human to move. And this is a slightly different one. I mean, it could be pareidolia, but that to me looks like a face. And there's a part of me that says, well, that could be a head torch. It could be something reflective, but it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, I've taken more detailed pictures in the past of rabbits where you can see two definitive eyes shining back. Because it wasn't really kind of giving off any natural light from it, this was purely, I think, down to a reflection of a torch shining at it. So I have no idea what this was. I took another photograph. So this was the other photograph I took. Again, you see like an immense amount of light. And I can't be sure whether that it was generating light or whether it was reflection, reflecting the light back off another torch. But it was just really, really strange and quite freakish. So this was then analysed, and so once it had gone through the software, we then kind of shows there's, to me, I noticed this straight away. It felt like there was a figure stood there, maybe an arm, maybe another arm. Analysed it a bit more. So you kind of get a bit more definition. And I'm no expert, but it does look like an arm, and it looks like a long coat, another arm. And again, it's more close up of it. I have no idea what these images were. To me, they didn't move naturally. To me, they didn't move like it was a person. And the way it floated down, seemingly just floated down across Castle Ring, as if it was making its way towards us. And you can't just move that smoothly across Castle Ring. It's got lots of pitfalls when you're on there. It's got bushes, it's got shrubs, it's uneven. You can't just kind of float your way across Castle Ring. That part of it just didn't make any sense. And a good friend that analysed this pointed out that this quite possibly we were looking at people, and I don't discount that at all. But right there and then, every instinct in my body told me that what I was looking at wasn't human, and that's really all I can sort of cling to with this, because it does look like a person. It looks like two people in the other picture, but then where did the other person go? And why when I was looking at it through a night scope, I mean, when you take a picture through a night scope, you can't always get the accuracy and the detail. But if you're just looking through a night scope, as I was, why did this person appear to be different shapes? Big shape, small shape, long shape, tall shape, just kept morphing from one shape to the next. And I mean, I have theories about what was going on, to be honest. And my one theory is that what we were experiencing was some kind of skinwalker. And it might sound crazy, but I think there is something at Cannock Chase that perhaps takes on the form of other things, depending on who is there. And Castle Ring has been notorious. I have heard a couple of stories about people encountering creatures there, unknown animals, quite frightening. And so we kind of developed this theory that maybe there is something there that's either curious or it's there to protect the Castle Ring or the area around it. And it feels like it's either an all-encompassing entity that is over Cannock Chase, or it's something specific that takes on the form of something else. But either way, it didn't feel natural. It didn't feel like it was human. It felt like it was transforming from one thing to another, and it felt like it was searching for perhaps, I mean, and this is just a theory, because I've seen things on Cannock Chase that I can't honestly explain or debunk. I've been there enough times now to have experienced these things, and although I want to kind of cover every avenue of trying to explain what it was we saw, and we all saw it, I'm finding it more and more difficult to explain away a lot of the things that I've experienced there. I've yet to kind of come face to face with a cryptid in a physical form, but you know, if I had to sum up this evening, which was incredible. I'd say I've come maybe face to face with something, whether it was cloaking itself. I was absolutely sure, I still am absolutely sure that there was something stood on the edge of that forest as my meter went off. I'm also absolutely sure that what I'm looking at in these pictures isn't human beings, and I have recorded other people walking around Castle Ring since, and the forms are very definitive. They're very obvious that it's a person walking around. I just can't explain this. This is probably the most mysterious thing I've ever experienced, and I got to be honest, this is one of the most incredible evenings I've experienced. And I think we're not dealing with ghosts here. I don't think we're dealing with physical, or what we would consider physical monsters, if you like. Things like Bigfoot. I think these things show themselves in different forms. And I think what we saw on this evening was something that was as close as you can get to a skinwalker or a shape-shifting entity. And I think maybe other sightings that people have experienced and encountered on the chase, maybe that is one of the same thing. It's something that changes its form to suit the person who sees it. So that said, this was an amazing night, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And it's going to take a lot of editing, I feel, but I look forward to editing this enough so it's kind of watchable. And I hope this blows your mind as much as it did for us to actually experience this evening. And it was probably about 4 or 5 hours. It was amazing. It was like a roller coaster, and I would love to have another evening like this. So ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you think. Join me in the comments below. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on what I experienced. It's very hard to debunk in hindsight anything we've encountered or experienced. Try to do that while we're there. So it's always, these images are always going to be able to question, I think, unless I actually got indisputable evidence on video footage of big hairy creatures walking, a UFO, an extraterrestrial. I don't think anything else is always open to question. And as part of a paranormal team, we will forever be questioning what we see. In hindsight, at the time, before, after, 2 years down the line, I'll still be questioning what we've seen. But it's great experiences down there that we've had at Cannock Chase, and now that we're out of lockdown, I'm hoping to get as many investigations as I can in for the rest of the year, and maybe visit some new places too. We've got a few new places lined up. We've got an old haunt lined up next week, which is going to be great. So yeah, guys, join me in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed watching this, me babbling on for about an hour. And till next time, take care of yourselves, and I'll catch you real soon on the next video. Hopefully I won't leave it so long.